without any further ado, we've heard quite a few questions this morning about data. When is it available? What's available? What's it going to look like? People are really keen to see what's going on with the data that's coming out of this on-farm project. So with that, I will turn things over to James Cober, who is a programs analyst with OSCIA, and he's going to give a demonstration of the data visualization dashboard. So James, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, so I'm super excited that today I have some time now to share an announcement with you about my favorite part of the on-farm program, which, as Bronwyn said, is our data. So with the soil health data being assembled from 25 BMP trial sites over several years, the data set is building up to be a pretty massive thing, which will be fantastic for all of us to keep learning from, but can be challenging to share. So what we've done is built a data dashboard, which will serve as a public space on our website for anyone to access some of that data and to explore whatever parts of it you feel are most relevant for you. So you can see here, I'm sharing my screen and I've loaded up the OSCIA research webpage, which is where you all came to register for this event. And underneath the on-farm heading here, we've added a new tab for the data dashboard. So when you select this, it will pop you into a new screen. Apologize, I've preloaded things to keep us running smoothly. But when you hover over this preview, it will say click to learn more, and you can click on that. It will launch you into a new tab. And so for this page right now, what we're looking at is some baseline data that came from SRG's work in 2020, starting with organic matter, a property that I'm sure most of you are familiar with, but also it goes on to show some of our numbers from Solvita, SLAN, and active carbon analysis. So I certainly won't have the time today to be going through all of these results in detail, and this presentation won't be focused on drawing any conclusions from the data. What I will be showing you today is a few of the options we have available in the tool for you to interact with the visuals. So for reference here, we're looking at some box plots which show the distribution of organic matter measurements, and I'll show you one of the main features available on the page, which is the filters. You can see them on the right. So when you select a filter option, it'll interact with the graphs and refresh to add or remove data as you choose it. Because I'm doing this on a Zoom presentation, it's going to go a little bit slower. So when you come to practice it, don't expect it to be this slow. But you can see here, looking at the fine sand category down in this column, the median is currently sitting at around 4%. As we know from Don's presentation, hill slopes have a large impact on our soil characteristics. And when we filter out the lower and mid slope positions, you can see that that median has dropped to around 2.5%. So I'd encourage you to come back later and try filtering out for just the lower landscape position to see other differences there. So you can use these filters to add or remove sites based on some of our operational practices to get a sense of how farms in the program may be similar or different compared to your own. And you can also check out the interactive map on our page to find some more information on any site. One of the other features that can be helpful for these box plots, for those of you who want some more specifics, is to hover over any of them, which will bring up a list of its summary statistics. Moving on through the page, you'll see that we have 3 sections that are mirrored for the more novel indicators we're exploring with the program. We're going to dive into another example here and focus on this graph in the bottom left, which is showing organic matter on the x-axis and Solvita on the y. And for reference, we've seen this before from Don, but Solvita CO2 burst is a measurement of biological respiration in soil and shows the activity of the microbial community. So when we look at this graph as a whole, you might see somewhat of a positive correlation here, but there's a lot of spread going on between the points, which we expect because it's including sites from across the province on different soils, under different management, and many things that affect a relationship. One of the things we can do is when I hover over this graph, you can see mode called focus mode, and I can't get to my other tab, so we'll just do this live. And it will pop you out into a full screen version. If you need to go back to the report, you can find that in the top left. It will take you back and load you in. Can I move this out of the way? We'll see. So scrolling down, you might see that there's a lot of clustering going on within our color scheme here. These colors are all representative of what soil type each sample is found in. So if we use our filter here for soil type, and we'll keep the example consistent with what we looked at before and select, say, just our sand and our sandy loam soils, you'll see the plots start to refresh and drop everything else out except for these examples. And when that happens, you'll see that a relationship becomes a little bit clearer. One thing to keep in mind when you apply these filters is that the page will change the axis numbering when you apply a filter. So previously we were looking at the organic matter access going to around 8%, and now it's dropped to around 5.5%. So be mindful of that if you're using this tool to compare different sets of filtered data. One last example that I'll show you for what you can use is for any of these scatter plots. If you want to zoom in on a particular area, we have options called zoom sliders that are available. So you can see these bubbles in the bottom corner. If you grab that, say you're interested in looking at the organic matter from farms that had higher levels, you only wanted to see something between 6 and 7% and see what Solvita levels you might expect based on that. You can drag and drop until the axis is showing just what you want and get a sense for those numbers, which are between 50 and say 90 parts per million, depending on your soil. So to finish scrolling through the dashboard, you can see some of the other content we've included for SLAN and for active carbon, and you can see that those relationships are very different. And you'll have plenty of time to explore that data after the session here. I would encourage you all to come back and come visit the website, check out the other concurrent session that you weren't able to see before, and then to jump into the dashboard and spend some time exploring it. To leave you now, though, I really want to frame this dashboard as just the first edition of our work with a new tool. And so know that more will be coming later. So soon that could be an iterative version of this that shows some multi-year data from 2021. But know that we'll be looking to do some breakdowns on the effects of our mini cover crop and organic amendment treatments on all these sites with other soil parameters, and potentially to evaluate the data through soil health assessment protocols here. So OSCIA will be working with SRG and will be updating the OnFarm Research website with new content as results are compiled and analyzed. So remember to check back in every so often or to follow us on Twitter to learn when new information is coming online. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, James. I'm trying to get back to my video here. And you got the dashboard was getting lots of compliments in the chat. So it seems like there might be appetite for a longer lunch and learn or some type of other training session.
Hopefully I can go through, and if there's any questions, I'll try and get back to people as we keep going.
I think we have time for, if there's one question you want to ask, if anybody wants to post something in the chat, we could have one question. Otherwise, we'll keep moving on our agenda, but seems like that's going to be a really fantastic resource for people to use and to learn from the OnFarm Research program.
Is Twitter the only social platform we're using? I know OSCIA has Facebook as well and LinkedIn, but I believe Twitter would be the most active in terms of the OnFarm program.
Great, thanks for answering that question. Super, so at this point, thanks James for sharing that with us today. That's going to be lots of interest to see how that evolves over the next few months. So super job. And Angie, back over to you, and I think you're going to introduce our next guest, and you have a few minutes to give another announcement, which is exciting.
Another exciting announcement, yes. It's an action-packed morning. I really want to thank James and encourage everyone, like he was saying, to explore the dashboard. We're also looking for feedback on it. As he mentioned, it's really a living initiative. So yeah, we'd look to improve it and enhance it and grow it as the next year the program goes on. But at this time, I am going to switch gears and announce another exciting initiative that is an upcoming on-farm and industry collaboration. So I would like to introduce and then turn it over to Erin McGregor, who is the Stewardship and Policy Manager joining us this morning from Syngenta, Canada.
Great. Thanks very much, Angie. Can you hear me okay? We're good?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, it's hard to follow James with such an amazing tool, but I'm very glad to join this morning. Good morning, everyone. As Angie said, I'm with Syngenta Canada, and I'm out of our Guelph office. And I do actually have a few colleagues with me here on the webinar today. Dr. Clint Truman, who'll be joining as panelist in the next session, and also Annalisa Mazzarato, I think, is still on the call too, and another member of regulatory stewardship team of Syngenta Canada. So we were all really quite keen to join the OnFarm Forum to hear the great lineup of speakers, and certainly the sessions did not disappoint. And thank you to OSCA for including us today and providing the opportunity for Syngenta to add just a few words. So for those of you that may not be familiar with our organization, we're a global science-based agri-tech company. And as a business serving the ag industry, Syngenta aims to help feed this world safely, bringing sustainable ag solutions to farmers while protecting and enhancing the environment. So what does that really mean to us? really the interconnectedness of agriculture and nature is at the heart of our commitments. Under Syngenta's global sustainability commitments, what we call our Good Growth Plan, we've committed to enhancing biodiversity and soil health on 7.4 million acres of rural land every year through 2025. So I know it's certainly not lost on this audience that the sustainability of agriculture relies on biodiversity. More than 1/3 of all crops are dependent on pollinators for propagation. Of course, pollinators are also an integral part of many natural habitats. Biodiversity truly sustains the ecosystems that underpin fertile soils. So it's with this shared interest in sustainable ag and partnering for impact that Syngenta and OSCA have successfully worked together on delivery of our Operation Pollinator program to growers in Ontario since 2018. And Operation Pollinator really is one example of a Syngenta biodiversity program in action. It's a decades-long global initiative. In Canada, the programs had many active iterations focused on research, education, and supporting habitat creation to promote the health and well-being of bees and other pollinators. And I think it almost goes without saying that the key to the success of our programs is partnerships with organizations like OSCIA, and very importantly with the farm cooperatives that take up opportunities for enhancing environmental stewardship on their farms. We know that farms provide great potential to create essential habitat and food sources for a range of pollinating insects. So we are extremely pleased to be able to work together again with OSCA to deliver the next stage of our Operation Pollinator program, offering it to on-farm cooperators beginning in 2022. And I'm really confident this hands-on project will provide a great opportunity for learning and helping growers in their efforts to actively support biodiversity on the farm. But I think we're also quite importantly viewing this as an opportunity for leveraging and sharing of knowledge, as has been really well highlighted today as a key pillar of the on-farm program. So it's events like these that speak to the high priority that stakeholders in Ontario agriculture place on applied research and learning. So I think probably I'll turn it back over to Angie, but I know OSCA will share more information on the program and planning for this year as it progresses. We're really looking forward to seeing how it moves forward, and certainly encourage on-farm cooperators to embrace the opportunity, I think. Thanks, Angie.
Thanks, Erin. It's great to hear from Syngenta, and we're just really thrilled to be partnering on this. I think I have some slides that might appear any moment now. But as Erin mentioned, Operation Pollinator is an international biodiversity program that provides participants with the opportunity to redirect land considered to be lower in productivity to the establishment of pollinator-friendly habitats for bees and other insects, offering a practical and meaningful way to increase and improve biodiversity on farm. Since 2018, OSCIA has delivered Operation Pollinator on behalf of Syngenta, and between 2018 and 2021, over 104 acres at 45 sites across the province were converted to pollinator habitat. 31 of these acres were seeded with an entirely Ontario native mix, and 2 of those sites were even hosted by current on-farm cooperators. So there's lots of already historical synergy between the 2 initiatives. Participants converted 1 to 2 acres of land into a dedicated Operation Pollinator site and received financial assistance to support site preparation, maintenance costs, as well as agronomic information and signage for the site. Next slide. So how does this link up with on-farm? So in 2022, we will be delivering the Operation Pollinator program exclusively to the existing network of on-farm cooperators, which was identified by OSCIA as a way to engage with leading farmers in Ontario that are historically supportive of soil health and water quality best management practices and well-positioned to showcase the benefits of agricultural biodiversity and share their knowledge with other farmers. OSCIA will be leveraging the knowledge transfer and engagement activities at these sites to demonstrate and measure the co-benefits of soil health and biodiversity. We're really thrilled to be working with Syngenta to offer this opportunity to the on-farm farmers and use these sites to display the pollinator benefits of Syngenta's fantastic programming. I will turn it back over to Bronwyn and we'll move into our panel. Thanks, everyone.
Amazing. Thank you, Angie and Erin. That's great. And so inspiring to see all this information about pollinators and the opportunity to cooperate with the on-farm cooperators. So that'll be exciting to see that unfold this coming year. So thank you for sharing that this morning. And yeah, as Angie mentioned, we are moving on to our panel discussion, and very happy to have a really great panel to kind of finish off our morning together. We have Clint Truman from Syngenta, Jennifer Dolman from Bonashare Haven Farms, and she is also an on-farm cooperator. Joshua Faulkner has kindly agreed to stay with us for the morning. We've already met him earlier. And then we have Norm Lamoth from Woodley Farms, and he's also an on-farm cooperator, and he had a great introduction earlier as well. So with that, I will turn things over to Clint first for a short overview of his presentation and his work with leveraging the benefits of on-farm research. So Clint, if I can turn the microphone over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to participate today. I think this has been wonderful. Just a couple of comments. I did not have, I'm going to work off of my background slide, which is a picture of my farm in Georgia. And we converted that entire farm from conventional till to conservation tillage. So I'll get into that in just a minute in terms of how we did that and some of the things that we experienced. So I have a unique perspective in coming to you today because I've been a grower and a researcher. So I know kind of both sides of the story. I think the important thing, a couple of comments on surrounding on-farm research, it's where SI units and profitability clash or meet. And I think this is one area that it may be challenging, but it can be very rewarding at the same time. I've been fortunate enough to be involved with numerous on-farm research projects. And from my experience, both as a grower and as a researcher, each and every one of those projects created win-win scenarios, both for the researcher and the grower. And I can honestly say that the accomplishments and the impact, and I think that's where the on-farm research is really beneficial, is the impact of these projects far exceed expectations. And I think one of the things that's been touched on over and over again today has been that leveraging this on-farm research, fosters grower researcher interactions, develops relationships such that science-based, scale-appropriate, cost-effective solutions can be delivered on farm. And they're addressing cost-effective solutions to grower-identified problems and issues. And I think the most important thing that we can emphasize here is that one of the bottom line is making sure that growers are profitable and sustainable. That being said, one of the things that we did when we converted this, now keep in mind, you've talked an awful lot about heavy clay soils in the north. And again, this is in the southeastern US. So you've got very sandy soils with heavy clay pan soils that limit infiltration. But one of the things that we saw was that sand contents were high, or soil organic carbon contents were low. And when we converted over, the biggest thing that we had to manage up front was expectations. Growers thought there's all this great research out there showing what conservation tillage does, and they thought we're going to get all these benefits in year one. And it was very clear that that was not the case. And so one of the things that we saw in year one was that, in fact, maybe yields were the same. The only benefit that we got was reduced erosion. But over time, what we saw was, utilizing fall seeded cover crops and then burning those cover crops down in the spring and strip tilling into those, that as long as we managed compaction, that we were able to convince growers in a region by region basis the benefits of conservation tillage, focusing on not only soil organic carbon, but demonstrating, as you've done here today, that soil health benefits you can't talk about soil health benefits without talking about water quality management and that sort of thing. They go hand in hand. And so for us, ironically, we were getting 50 to 52 inches of rain a year, but it never rains when you need it. And so all the growers had supplemental irrigation. So oftentimes what we were doing is where our SI units met profitability, we were able to demonstrate that we reduced trips across the field and reduced number of irrigations that maintained yields, and that alone was enough to demonstrate that what we were trying to get over to growers was beneficial. The other thing that we found out real quick was that each grower knows what his neighbor's doing, and if you go there and let the grower have grower demonstration days, that was one of the best ways to promote what was going on and how things worked on a given farm, because it was more beneficial to have them tell their story than the researcher demonstrate what the benefit might be from that standpoint. Then to tell you a little bit about what's going on at Syngenta, I'm currently running a science-based sustainability program, which we're looking at soil health indices and water quality metrics. And we're creating a platform that is a grower decision support tool that has a huge database for all of our growers. And what we're doing is utilizing that database to add in some of our cache samples that we're collecting at the time that they collect fertility samples. And we're using our Grow More sites and our Farm of the Future sites to be able to have regional demonstration sites where we can have farmer field days, demonstrate some of the things that we're doing, and then utilize the database and the platform by region to then help them make better decisions relative to profitability and sustainability. And one of the things that we focus on is a return on investment. So if you do a conservation tillage or you adopt this particular innovation tool, what's your return on investment? And I think that's been well received within the grower community with Syngenta. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Bronwyn.
Yep, great. Thank you so much, Clint. I appreciate that overview of the on-farm research you've been doing there and experience with Syngenta, so wonderful. And yeah, another interesting example of a different type of soil in southern US, so wonderful. With that, we'll turn things over to Jen Dolman to share her on-farm research journey and yeah, leveraging on-farm research. So Jen.
Thanks very much, Bronwyn. Thank you. And thanks very much for everyone who came today. I've really enjoyed this this presentation so far. So just for context, I'm a farmer, a mother, a beekeeper, and an agronomist from Renfrew County, Angie's hometown kind of neighborhood. So yay, Renfrew County. And just for context, I'll give some of my background. So I'm a third generation seed producer, which I'll talk about in the next slide. I grew up cow, calf, and feedlot. And then when I was 11, Dad realized that the cattle weren't really paying their way. So he had expanded his seed business by building our area's first bulk fertilizer processing facility. So by 28 years old, I was a certified crop advisor and a full owner and manager in our crop input business, as well as our farm, which was really neat because my dad always said the reason why he did this is he knew what it was like to stand on both sides of the counter. We in our business didn't want to be promoting any new technologies or promoting, or just recommending any products until we'd actually tried it ourselves or worked with other farmers who were interested in seeing it, just to see how it's adapted locally. I got a great chance to get training from like my other suppliers and things like that. Now fast forward into the future, now it's just my husband and I farming on our own. So we're officially a first generation farm. And we've expanded our diverse rotation to include perennial forages and bees, and do our very best to collaborate with neighbors to help us. We want to have the livestock, but it's hard to be a master of everything. So trying to incorporate perennial forages and cover crops and grazing and things like that. But what we always want to be doing is looking at this with this, an evidence-based approach. And it always has to have a business lens to it because we're not in this line of work, like the money's got to come from somewhere. And I would like to say it is being done altruistically because I love all the stewardship, but at the same time, like sustainability means that we're here to keep farming in the future, as well as having good soil and land and all clean water and fresh air. So if you can go to the next slide. So whenever we talk about research, I think I was actually born into it. My grandfather, and it was neat, some of the other people on the presentation today also talked about the multi-generational impact of this. So my grandpa's actually in the Agricultural Hall of Fame for his pioneering work with seed production. So he worked with the Canadian seed growers, he worked with government, plant breeders, and universities. Because we were close to where the experimental farm in Ottawa was, we were able to develop cereals and forage seeds. So, you know, the business has changed. We're not so involved in that now. But both my grandpa and my dad were involved in soil and crop and working to help further improve farm productivity through innovative land and management practices. Our area is fairly underserviced, so we as farmers have had to learn to kind of fend for ourselves, and things like soil and crop and on-farm research, and again, having this amazing program available to us has been really great. Because we're able to better manage what works in our zone. So we have the Winchester Research Station in Eastern Ontario, but we actually don't have very much data in terms of winter survivability of winter wheat, because Renfrew and Winchester are totally different. So, you know, we've learned that by collaborating with each other, collaborating with our local agribusiness, enticing and inviting wonderful researchers like this crew to come and help us come up the curve. It's when the tide rises, we all rise together. So for us, I'm really keen to just find ways to collaborate and engage and kind of form that mycorrhiza that strengthens our local community and our environment. That's it.
I love that. Strengthening that network is really important, and yeah, critical to the collaboration and learning from what one farmer does on their farm to share that. And yeah, it's wonderful. I think Clint mentioned that as well, that farmer engagement and having field demonstration days and things like that. So super. Joshua, at this point, do you want to add anything about your on-farm research journey and why you're so committed to the on-farm research aspect of your work?
Sure, thank you. I'll just a minute. You've heard me talk enough this morning. I'll just say, you know, why I became interested in on-farm work for two reasons, and then I'll leave it at that. One is we have farmers, as farmers everywhere, who are skeptical of results from elsewhere, you know, because the soils are different, the climate's different, so on and so on. And so we needed local data to create buy-in on education efforts, and we needed local data to inform policy so that farmers would have some buy-in in that policy that is affecting them every day on the ground. And so that was a big driver for our on-farm research. And the second thing is that we understand well that highly controlled experiments have their place. They're really important, but they don't reflect the reality of farming and the challenges and the variability that happens on real farms. And so we wanted to collect data on operating farms that reflected the true conditions and the reality of what farming entails and how that would influence those outcomes and those data that we're interested in.
Awesome. Yeah, really important point about the reality of farming. Is one thing to do something in a lab, but what happens in a real landscape is really important. So thank you for that. And last but definitely not least, Norm, just what would you like to share about starting your on-farm research journey and why you remain so committed to that journey?
Yeah, thanks so much, Bronwyn, and good morning, everyone. Norm Lamont here from Woodley Farms. We're located in Cavan, Ontario, which is just on the southern fringes of Peterborough County. We operate a 500-acre diverse farm, which includes a 3-acre market garden, which you see there in the bottom right-hand corner, a cash crop operation, and that now includes 4 crops in a rotation: corn, soy, wheat, and oats. We also do about 120 acres of forages and hay, primarily for the horse market. Most recently, we've added a compost division to our farm, and that involves the processing of leaf and yard waste from our local municipality as well as the county. So we receive that material spring and fall, and we convert it, compost it, and field apply it to our own fields for soil health purposes. We've also recently built and developed a passive solar greenhouse, which you see behind me here in the virtual background. In addition to that, we also do 1,500 taps of maple syrup and have recently certified that operation as organic. And we've deployed precision agricultural practices across the farm here in the last 5 or 6 years. And that includes the use of technologies such as drone, variable rate technologies, and other precision agriculture techniques. Go ahead and switch to the next slide, please. So our journey into research really actively started when I started becoming more involved in the farm. And you see a picture of my son here with his tidy whities. This was an initiative put on by Ontario Soil and Crop several years ago, where you buried the pair of white underwear in the soil and allowed the soil microbes to do their thing, and you came back to see how healthy your soil was. Well, much to my dismay, we could have washed those underwear and put them back on my son and continued on. Whether or not it was a result of the very dry season that we had, or whether or not it was a result of the lack of microbial activity in our soil, it certainly began to intrigue me as to why those underwear were still intact when I was seeing all these pictures on Twitter of others that were left with rubber bands. And so that's really where my journey began. And it was around that same time that we made a significant purchase on the farm here by getting a combine and yield monitoring capabilities. And that allowed us to focus a little more on the decisions that we were making and being able to measure those. In the right-hand picture here, you see in 2020, this is the on-farm team in our on-farm plot doing some of their baseline data collections. And the on-farm program has really allowed us to answer some of the more technical questions with the long-term vision of soil health initiatives. Our combine and yield monitor certainly can measure trials, side-by-sides, population trials, treatment trials on a year-to-year basis, but it can't measure and track the longer-term items which we're looking to seek, and those are really related around soil health and microbial activities, water retention, and soil organic matter. So I wouldn't mind going to the last slide, Bronwyn. Our inquisitive minds have led us down this research path, and great research really starts with some goals in mind. For us, the goals of conducting research on the farm are primarily related to soil health and getting a better understanding of how our practices affect both the environment around us in the air, but also the environment in the soil and how those plants are interacting with the nutrients that are available to them. I often talk about how I farm with my pencil, and me, the decisions that we make, given our size at 500 acres, we have to farm our acres very, very actively and use a lot of high management techniques. So economics are first and foremost a priority, but how do we balance those with yield and profitability, as well as our responsibilities? Social responsibility is another key one for us in our research goals. And trying to justify the need for some of the practices that we do, and identifying which of those practices could be eliminated, could be reduced, or need to be maintained. I'm a fairly young farmer, and because of that, I've got some very long-term goals with regards to the research that we're conducting on the farm. We have some great baseline data. We've collected a lot of data over the years, and that's going to allow us to track those trends over time. And we've also set up some trials that we're going to maintain over a longer period of time, including a 2-crop rotation adjacent to some of our research trials, just to show the differences in soil health over that period. We have a strong focus here on our farm using off-farm amendments and reducing some of the more commercially available products. And that includes rotations and keeping the soil covered through the use of cover crops. And 3 of our crops now have cover crops as part of that rotation. We're very data driven. I probably use far too many spreadsheets for the average person. But I always say, if it can't be measured, it can't be validated. And so gathering those baseline data points, measuring them, weighing off wagons and calibrating the yield monitor on the combine to ensure that measuring accurate data that we collect in the field is extremely important. And the last thing I would point out, and what's been a big part of our success in the research that we've done here on the farm, is I'm the sum of my parts. We often talk about farmers being a jack of all trades, but master of none. Well, you really need to find a team that complements you and fills in the voids with respect to everything that you want to do on the farm. So building a team that complements you, that's both internal with staff. I know where my strengths lie, and I know where I need a lot of help, and also externally, and that's partnering with groups such as stakeholders, government, and a lot of the associations that are doing wonderful work in this space. and pulling out the maximum that we can and sharing that information with other farmers across the province. So thanks for that.
Wonderful. Thank you for that overview. And I've had one of my team members ask for a tour of your farm at some point, so we'll have to arrange that one day. But sounds like a really great operation you're running, and same with you, Jen. So have to swing around the province and check out all these wonderful farms. But there's a great question in the chat, and how are farm cooperators feeling about the support they're getting from researchers? Has it been onerous to put in plots, collect data, etc.? And would that maybe mean you'd need more support, financial or otherwise, to maintain long-term plots? So maybe just a few comments on that. If Jen, you said you were looking forward to answering that, so I'll start with you.
Oh yeah. So I guess some of this comes down to where you're starting from. If you have never done on-farm research, I could see this being very intimidating. But when you're used to doing on-farm research by yourself with no resources, this is honestly like going to Disneyland and being a VIP. Having these people here to help with organizing this, keeping us on timelines, just even having my kids have exposure to these soil scientists and this other work, like it's pretty impressive. It really shows me that, like, in some ways, I hate to say it, but it looks like some parts of Ontario have these amazing ecosystems that are so like supported. And then there's these like vast deserts without. So it would be really nice for us to find ways within our own communities to help build into that capacity, especially in more rural and remote areas. I'm just flabbergasted by this. The one thing I would say is that farmer readiness, especially for the operators, like as the managers, we get this, but I kind of need to like explain to the guys why it's about to rain, but we need to stop and calibrate the way wagon, right? Like it's just, you're only as good as your weakest link. And finding tactile, hands-on ways for the people who don't necessarily want to slow down to do things a certain way, for them to see that end goal of the why we're doing this.
Did you want to add anything to that, Norm?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree 100% with Jen. I would be doing this research regardless of whether or not these programs existed, but they allow us to enhance them. And as Jen pointed out as well, it's extremely important to have engagement both from yourself in getting involved with research, but also your staff members. It takes a team effort to make it a success, and everyone has to sort of buy into all the crazy flags that you're putting out everywhere, and trying not to run over them or spray them or any of those things.
Yeah, exactly. And Josh, you had mentioned that in your presentation this morning. Did you have anything to reflect from the researcher side on that question of the important relationship between the researchers and the farmers?
Yeah, that's I think that's the number one important thing when we go about doing this type of work, is that trust and relationship and communication too. Communication is absolutely critical. It's more important than all the science, I think, that we're doing in terms of having a successful outcome. So I would encourage any farmers or researchers, like, have good communication and make sure everyone's on the same page and we all know what's going to happen in that field and what our objectives are, and so on and so forth. And that goes a long way.
Yeah, exactly. And Clint, do you want to jump in there? You're still on mute if you're starting to talk.
There you go. Yeah, I just add that, from a researcher standpoint, and Joshua knows this, we tend to publish our research in slick-back publications. And in fact, they do people very little good when they're in those slick-back publications. So the accomplishment part is very high when it's in the publication form, but the impact is very low. And so when you can get out and put science-based results on farm and make them applicable, now you've got accomplishment and impact at the same time.
Oh, super. And just had a question for probably Norm and Jen again, but we'll try and get through a couple questions quickly. But do you want to comment on how you leverage the findings of on-farm research in your overall operation or business? Is there anything you're learning from that research that you can kind of spin into your, yeah, go ahead, Jen.
So as you saw in my presentation, I was a multi-generational farm, and now we're one generation. Honestly, on farm was in some ways the chink in the armor, because my dad and I, who have very similar goals and values, literally were like fist pounding the table as to whether these organic amendments paid their way. So I'm loving having this ability to be able to quantify without necessarily, because there's always the quantitative and then there's the qualitative, and I can do the qualitative analysis quite well. But that quantitative, I just don't have the ability to do the statistical analysis, or even like Scott Banks, he's hand harvesting with like scissors, my areas, right? Like I don't have time for that level of precision. So I'm very much using it. And a lot of neighbors are looking over, there's no fence, but looking over the edge of the field to kind of see what we're doing and seeing how we're making it work. And I'm loving this because I have somebody helping me check my own biases. And I think Dad's going to be really happy if he can prove he was right. But either way, I'm happy to have tried it.
Awesome. Norm?
Yeah, I would just add to that, the leverage comes from isolating of the variables and reminding us as farmers that we need to just focus in on the few things that we're looking to answer on those specific research trials. I often go back to, if Walmart puts a game on their shelf, they know within 2 weeks whether or not that game was successful. And that's one of the biggest struggles with on-farm research, is that our cycles are long in agriculture. I mean, if we've got a drought or the weather doesn't cooperate with whatever trial we're setting up, we have to wait a full cycle to even try that again, and let alone getting replications out of those. And back to Jen's point as well, to be able to put a pencil to some of the practices related to soil health, they're going to take a generation to fully analyze. And that's what's exciting about this as well, is that we've got the opportunity here to show that to growers and to make those improvements at the ground level.
Awesome, that's great. Clint, did you have a quick comment you wanted to add to that on what your experience has been seeing farmers leverage the information from on-farm research? Or Joshua, either one of you, if you want to jump in on that from your perspective.
Yeah, I'll just say that I think anytime you can get a different perspective, it adds, information is valuable. And I think one of the things that we saw was that, sometimes growers were not interested in whether something was statistically different or not. If I tell you you're going to save $10 per acre, that's valuable, whether it's statistically different or not. And so that was an interesting piece to keep in mind. But I think the bottom line for the grower was, you're either making money or you're not. And the goal is to keep it where you put it. And if you keep it where you put it, you're probably going to make money.
Cool. Any last comments on those types of pieces, Joshua?
Nope. I just, I would agree with folks here. It's really, nothing is more powerful than information that was collected on the farm down the road or the next county over. So, there's just, we use this in the state legislature. We use it with policymakers, state agencies. This stuff goes beyond what we use in extension programs. It really does affect things at a higher level.
Awesome. Well, I'm afraid we're pretty much out of time. I just want to go around one round quickly. Just any advice you might give to either a researcher or a farmer if they're hesitant but thinking about doing on-farm research, and you can pick which person you want to give advice to. So just 1 or 2 sentences advice to either a farmer or a researcher thinking about jumping into on-farm research work. And I'll ask for a volunteer to start. Jen, go for it.
I'll take the easy, low-hanging fruit. Start small and start with what your biggest barrier is. So for us, we had drought issues. So for us, it's always been, how do we make it that we can survive that many more days without a rain, And so what are the different things that are easy to do with the equipment we have, or, within the scale that we have, and how do we measure that? So that helps you when you've got a good why.
Awesome. The why, and start small. Great advice. Norm?
Assume you know nothing. I've been farming this farm for some time, and we were out there with the on-farm team, and we were digging down, and 18 inches below the soil surface was the water table. And I had no idea we had that much water that close to the soil surface. We had crusting on the top, we had drought-like conditions on the top, and we had roots that couldn't reach a water table that was 18 inches below us. And I had no idea what the soil profile was until that moment. And it was really interesting for me and an eye opener to learn about that. So go into it with an open mind, set realistic expectations, and like Jen said, isolate one variable at a time, focus on that, and you'll be successful.
Love that. That's great. Joshua?
Sure. I think my advice would be for a farmer, if you're getting ready to work with a researcher, make them explain everything in very plain language. Some researchers are very bad about that, using jargon. So just make sure, force them to use, don't let them get away with being overly technical. Just like, tell us what you want to do, tell us why you're doing it and how you're going to get it done, and make sure that any expectations they have of you are clear. That's really important.
Amazing. Yeah, great advice. And Clint, last word to you, just very briefly.
Communicate. No expectations are huge. Take a stepwise approach. You got to walk before you can run, and because it's a management issue, small management all the way up to very management intensive. So that way you will make sure you get your expectations, communicate, stepwise approach.
Excellent. That's a wonderful round of advice from all of you. And thank you so much for being part of this panel and our forum this morning, and appreciate all the comments and insights. And with that, I will turn things over for closing comments to Nick Stokman, another on-farm cooperator, to provide some closing remarks for the forum. So Nick, I believe you're coming in on audio only, and Andrea will be sharing some slides that go along with your comments.
Thanks, Bronwyn. It's been an excellent session this morning. Can understand exactly what a lot of the presenters have talked about, because I've been there, done that, and it's been an excellent session this morning. Our presenters today have touched on a wide range of topics that all relate to soil health, water quality, working together, and most importantly, learning from each other. Each of us can probably say what prompted us to follow the path we are on, be it looking at the bigger picture, a more philosophical approach, or a comment or question that initiated a change. In my case, when Middlesex Soil and Crops started the Strathmere Lodge demonstration farm in 1986, as operator manager, I was asked to talk about the work we were doing, primarily no-till, to various farm groups. At one of those presentations in the late 80s, the comment was made, "Sure, no-till works on the sand at Strathmere, but what about the clay on your farm?" That was the turning point. The external challenge to me to quote unquote, put up or shut up. The plow was relegated to the back corner of the shed, other than some comparison strips for a few years. I've had my best and worst yields in no-till, and every year has been a learning experience. Woody is trying a different design of the wheel, permanent inter-row covers. Mike and I tried some 60-inch row corn this past year. There are some significant bumps on each of those wheels, and they don't roll really well right now. Some of the bumps are going to need oxygen and acetylene to remove. Others only need a grinder, but those wheels will roll much smoother with refinements over successive years. On-farm cooperators like Henry, Jen, Norm, Tyler, and Ed have discussed their operations today. While each of our farms is different, the goals that we've heard today are basically all the same: improved soil health, water quality, resiliency, environmental, and also as important, economic sustainability. We also know that while we might be able to do some things that turbocharge the process, we probably won't see significant differences in 1 year or one cycle of the rotation. And that's been reiterated multiple times today. On behalf of OSCIA, thanks to Assistant Deputy Minister Kelly McCaslin, Andrew Jameson, with a title way too long to remember, from OMAFRA, for their participation today and for OMAFRA's continued support of the project. Thanks also to Dr. Faulkner and Dr. Truman for sharing your insights on research, learning, and collaboration. And regardless of where in the world we farm, I think the message that they brought, translating that research into actual on-farm work and communicating that in a manner that everybody understands is very important. To Don and the SRG team, thanks for doing all the grunt work to provide much of the data and the analysis thereof. When I got the results of the hand yields for my corn plot, the numbers looked high. Told them that they must have thrown in a few extra cobs. When all the numbers were crunched after harvest, looks like they only put in one extra cob. To my fellow on-farm cooperators, thanks for sharing your experiences, journey, and data, not only with us, but with Production Ag in Ontario and beyond. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick. That was great. Thanks for those closing comments. And at this point, on behalf of Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association, I would like to thank all of you for taking the time to join us for the forum. And please visit the OnFarm website for more information and updates, including the forum summary report and the recordings from today's event, which will be posted as soon as possible.